I need to start with something small, something so ordinary that under different circumstances, it would barely register as a moment worth remembering. I was sitting at the kitchen table on a Wednesday evening in March, laptop open, glass of wine beside me, trying to book a hotel for a weekend away. I was planning for mine and my husband's 10th wedding anniversary. Nothing dramatic, just the specific low-effort happiness of planning something nice, scrolling through room options and reading reviews about whether the breakfast was worth the price. His name was Tom. We had been married for 9 years at that point, approaching 10. We had a house, 2 children, a boy of 7 and a girl of 5, a dog that was getting too old for long walks, and the kind of life that looks from the outside exactly the way a good life is supposed to look. I was not unhappy. I want to say that clearly because I think it matters for understanding how completely I was not looking for what I found. I was on a hotel comparison website. I was searching for availability in the coastal town we had been to for our honeymoon, thinking it would be a meaningful choice for the anniversary. I typed in the location, the dates, and then, because the website had an autofill function linked to previous searches made on the same browser, a drop-down appeared beneath the search bar. Previous searches in this location. Tom used my laptop occasionally. He used it for work things when his own laptop was charging, for printing documents, occasionally for looking things up quickly. He had used it recently enough that his searches were still in the autofill history. There were 4 previous searches for that coastal town. All of them within the last 18 months. None of them during any trip I had been on with him. I sat there for a moment, looking at those 4 searches. The dates, the room types. One of them specified a family room. A family room. Tom traveled for work. He traveled quite a lot, actually. His role involved client visits, and he was often away 2 or 3 nights a month, in various locations. I had never thought particularly hard about the details of those trips. It had been the pattern of our life together for long enough that it was just the background texture of things. The way the dog needing a walk was background texture, or the school run, or any of the other things that accumulate into a life. I closed the laptop. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time without moving. Then I opened it again. Here is something I want to say about what happened over the following 72 hours before I tell you what I found. I am not someone who has ever gone through a partner's phone or emails. Not because I was naive about the fact that people do that, but because it had genuinely never occurred to me to have a reason to. Trust in my marriage had always been the air we breathed, rather than a thing I had to think about consciously. The thought of checking Tom's messages would have felt, before that Wednesday evening, like an absurd invasion of something that didn't need invading. After those 4 hotel searches, I gave myself approximately 40 minutes of sitting with the discomfort of what I was about to do before I did it. I went through his email. He had a personal email account that he stayed logged into on his phone, which he had left on charge in the kitchen while he put the children to bed. I picked up his phone, I opened the email app, and I started reading. What I found in the next 3 hours rearranged everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my husband, and the last 7 years of my life. The first email that mattered was a booking confirmation, a hotel in the coastal town, a family room, 2 adults, 2 children, dated 8 months earlier. I sat with that for a while before I kept going. The second thing that mattered was a name, a woman's name. I'll call her Sandra, who appeared in a thread of emails that went back, when I followed it to its beginning, almost 7 years. 7 years of emails. The tone of them was not the tone of a casual acquaintance. It was the tone of 2 people who had built something together over a long time. The third thing I found, which is the detail I have thought about more than any other in the years since, was a photograph attached to an email from about 2 years earlier. Sandra had sent it, a photograph of 2 children I did not recognize, sitting on a beach somewhere, squinting into the sun. The email said simply, "They miss you. Come soon." 2 children. I sat on the kitchen floor. I had moved from the table to the floor at some point without noticing, and I counted. 7 years of emails. 2 children in a photograph. My own children were 7 and 5. The overlap was not an overlap. It was a simultaneity. These things had not happened sequentially. They had happened at the same time, parallel, running alongside each other for what appeared to be the entire length of the time I had known my children's existence as a fact of my life. Tom came downstairs about 20 minutes later to find me on the floor of our kitchen with his phone in my hand. I have been asked, by everyone who knows this story, what that conversation was like, whether there was shouting, whether he denied it, whether I threw something. None of those things happened. What actually happened is that he sat down on the floor across from me. I don't know whether that was instinct or calculation, whether he understood that sitting in a chair while I was on the floor would have felt unbearable. And he looked at his phone in my hand and he said, "How long have you been looking?" I told him, 3 hours, approximately. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'm sorry. I have been trying to figure out how to tell you for a long time. I want to be honest that this is the moment I remember most clearly. Not because of what he said, but because of what the sentence revealed about the internal timeline he had been living. He had been trying to figure out how to tell me, which meant there had been a timeline in his head where a telling was coming, where I was going to find out eventually through his agency rather than mine, where he had been managing, in whatever corner of himself he kept this, some version of an intention to address it. I asked him how long. He said Sandra, and he had been together since before we were married. I am not going to reproduce the full conversation because some of it belongs only to me, and some of it is still too close to look at directly even now. What I can tell you is the outline of what I learned. They had met through work, before Tom and I were a couple. When Tom and I became serious, he had not ended it. When we got engaged, he had not ended it. When we married, he had not ended it. When I became pregnant with our first child, Sandra had also been pregnant. The children in the photograph were 7 and 5. The same ages as mine. Different mothers. Same father. He had been supporting both households financially, not equally, he admitted, when I pressed him on it, but both. He had a second phone, a second email address, a second set of plans for every occasion where he disappeared for 2 or 3 days for work. For almost a decade, he had been 2 different people in 2 different lives, and neither version of him had ever intersected with the other, until a hotel comparison website auto-filled a search I hadn't made. I am going to be honest about the weeks after that conversation in a way that might be uncomfortable to hear. I did not ask him to leave that night. I know this is the part of the story where people expect a dramatic ejection, a suitcase on the doorstep, something that signals the appropriate response to what I had just discovered. It didn't happen that way. What happened was that we sat on the kitchen floor for a very long time, and eventually I went to bed and he slept in the spare room. And the next morning, our children came downstairs for breakfast, and I made their packed lunches and took them to school and came home and sat in the kitchen again, and the house was very quiet. I called my sister. This was the first person I told. She drove to me within 2 hours of the call, and she sat with me for the rest of that day, and I am not going to tell you what was said between us because it was private in a way that feels important to preserve, but she was there, and that mattered more than anything said. Over the following 3 weeks, during which Tom stayed in the house because the children were there and disrupting their routine, before I had decided anything felt like a compounding of the damage rather than a response to it, I did several things. I contacted a family solicitor, not because I had decided anything. I was not capable of deciding anything for some time, but because I needed to understand what my actual position was before I made any choices. The solicitor told me things I needed to know about the financial implications of what I was discovering, about what the legal situation was regarding the second family, and about what my options were in terms of next steps. I did something else that I had not planned to do but that felt, when I thought about it, completely necessary. I contacted Sandra. I want to spend some time on this, because I think it is the most important and most complicated part of the whole story. I found Sandra's email address in Tom's inbox. I wrote to her from my own email address. I told her who I was. I told her I knew about her and her children. I told her I was not writing out of anger, and that I was not writing to cause her any harm. I said I was writing because I thought she deserved to know that the situation she was in was not what she had understood it to be, and that I had recently found out things that I believed she had not been told. She replied within 4 hours. What she told me rewrote the story again in ways I had not anticipated. Sandra had not known Tom was married. She had not known he had children with another woman. She had believed, for the entire length of their relationship, that his frequent absences were explained by the work demands he had described to her. A job that required significant travel, and the kind of extended periods away from home that he had also, I now understood, been describing to me. She had believed she was his primary relationship. She had built her life around a version of Tom that included her and her children as the center of it. She had been deceived as comprehensively as I had, just from a different side of the same lie. We talked on the phone 3 days later. It was one of the strangest conversations I have ever had. Two women who had both loved the same man without knowing the other existed, comparing notes on a decade of parallel life, finding the specific details where our stories overlapped and diverged, understanding slowly and with increasing clarity exactly how the whole architecture had been maintained. She cried at some points. I cried at others. We were not crying for the same things exactly, but there was something in that conversation that felt, strangely, like the first entirely honest thing that had happened in connection with Tom in a very long time. I am going to tell you where things went without going into every detail, because some of it is legally complicated, and some of it involves my children in ways I want to be careful about. Tom moved out approximately 6 weeks after the Wednesday evening with the laptop. Not because I gave him an ultimatum on a specific night, but because the process of understanding what had happened gradually made the prospect of him remaining in the house impossible in a way that became undeniable to both of us. The divorce was not quick or simple. Financial matters that looked straightforward on the surface were complicated by the existence of a second household that Tom had been financially supporting in parallel, which had implications for the asset division that my solicitor navigated over the course of almost a year. Sandra and I have stayed in contact. I want to be clear that this is not a simple friendship. It is something more specific and harder to name than friendship. We are two people who were both made to live inside a lie they hadn't chosen, whose children are half-siblings who had never met, and who have had to figure out between them what to do with that fact. We have been doing that, figuring out slowly and with a great deal of care and without any roadmap, because there isn't one for this exact situation. The children, all 4 of them, know each other now. This happened gradually, carefully, with the involvement of people who know how to support children through complicated family situations. It is not uncomplicated. It will probably never be uncomplicated, but they know each other. Tom's relationship with Sandra ended, as it turned out, within a few months of everything coming to light. I am not sure exactly what happened between them. That's not information that belongs to me. But I know enough to understand that the version of himself he had presented to her was as constructed as the version he had presented to me, and that when both versions were removed simultaneously, there wasn't a stable foundation left for either life. I want to end this story with something that is not a simple moral, because simple morals don't really survive contact with situations this complicated. The thing I come back to most often when I think about all of it is the hotel comparison website, the autofill. The 4 previous searches that appeared in a drop-down while I was trying to book something for our anniversary, he had used my laptop. He had searched for hotels in that coastal town, family rooms, specific dates, without clearing the browser history. Whether that was carelessness or something more complicated, I genuinely don't know. I have thought about it from every angle, and I can't arrive at a definitive answer. People who maintain something like what he was maintaining for a decade don't usually make careless mistakes for no reason. What I know is that the discovery happened through the most ordinary possible moment. A Wednesday evening, a glass of wine, a browser history I hadn't gone looking for, and that the life I have now, which is smaller in some ways than the life I had before, and larger in others, and more honest in all of them, began in that moment. I am not going to tell you I am better off. That formulation has always felt too tidy for something this messy. What I will tell you is that I am more accurately located. I know where I am and what I am working with and who the people around me actually are, rather than who the version of my life I was living had arranged them to appear to be. That is its own kind of freedom, I've found. The kind that doesn't come easily and doesn't look like what you expected freedom to look like, but the kind that, once you have it, you understand you could not have gone without. That is karma filed. Real life, real deception, real truth, arriving through a browser history nobody thought to clear. If this story reached you somewhere, and I think it might, because the secret second family is one of the most common and most devastating things that happens to real people, and is talked about far less than it should be, you know what to do. Subscribe, hit the bell, and leave me a comment. Have you ever discovered something life-changing completely by accident? Tell me about it. I read every single one. I'll see you in the next video.